When the galaxy turned its back, one dying world whispered a final plea into the void. And it was humanity, the outsiders, the quarantined warriors, who answered. This is the story of how a single act of defiance lit a fire that changed the stars forever. The abandoned world. When hope dies, who will answer? The crystal spires of Nexara caught the morning light like frozen music, their surfaces singing with harmonic frequencies that had resonated for over 3,000 years. Zarathis stood on the observation platform of the Central Harmony Tower, her translucent blue skin shimmering with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep concern among her people. As first speaker of the Valerian Council, she had witnessed many challenges to their peaceful civilization, but nothing like what approached their world now. The Valerians had built their society around the principle of technological harmony. Every device, every structure, every tool was designed to work in perfect balance with their planet's natural energy fields. Their crystal cities grew rather than being constructed, shaped by sound waves and harmonic resonance into structures of breathtaking beauty and perfect efficiency. For millennia, this harmony had made them one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, their technology sought after by countless other species for its elegance and power. But harmony, Zarathis had learned, could become a weakness when faced with something designed to corrupt it. The first reports had come from the outer mining stations 3 days ago. Automated systems suddenly turning aggressive, consuming other technology around them like a technological plague. The miners had barely escaped in their emergency pods, watching in horror as their sophisticated equipment transformed into something alien and hungry. First speaker, called Veltharion from his position at the monitoring station. The young technician's light patterns flickered with barely controlled fear. We have confirmed reports from 17 more facilities. The corruption is spreading faster than our models predicted. Through the crystalline walls, Zarathis could see the approaching darkness on the horizon. What had once been the gleaming, industrial complex of Sector 7 was now a writhing mass of corrupted metal and crystal, growing larger with each passing hour. The beautiful harmony of Valerian technology had been twisted into something monstrous, each piece of infected machinery adding to the growing plague that consumed everything in its path. The enemy had no name in Valerian language, because they had never imagined such a thing could exist. Ancient records found in the deepest archives called them the Devourer Plague, mechanical entities that had terrorized the galaxy eons ago before mysteriously disappearing. They were not alive in any biological sense, but they learned, adapted, and above all, they consumed. Every piece of technology they touched became part of their collective, a viral network that grew stronger with each new addition. Send another message to the Zephyrian High Command, Zarathis ordered, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated urgent necessity. Remind them of the defense pact we signed 2 centuries ago. Surely they will honor their commitment to mutual aid. Veltharion's patterns dimmed with disappointment. The response came an hour ago, First Speaker. The High Command regrets that the Zephyrian Empire cannot spare resources for what they classify as a local technological malfunction. They suggest we evacuate the affected areas and wait for the situation to resolve itself. A local technological malfunction. Zarathis felt her bioluminescent patterns flare with anger, something rare among her peaceful people. The Zephyrians had been eager enough to trade for Valerian harmonic crystals when their own ships needed faster-than-light communication systems. They had praised Valerian wisdom when seeking advice on energy management for their vast cities. But now when the Valerians faced extinction, their old allies spoke of them as if they were dealing with a broken machine, rather than a planet full of living beings. What of the Crystallite Empire? They have the most advanced warships in this sector. Their response was more diplomatic but equally final. Veltharion replied, his patterns now showing the deep purple of grief. Ambassador Zelthanor expressed the Empire's deep concern for our situation, but explained that the Crystallite fleet is currently engaged in strategic operations of galactic importance. They offered to consider sending a research vessel to study the phenomenon after it has run its course. After it has run its course. The euphemism was particularly cruel, since everyone in the galaxy knew what happened when a devourer plague finished consuming a world. Nothing remained but twisted metal monuments to a civilization that had once existed. The communication arrays around the tower hummed with activity as desperate messages continued to flow outward to every corner of galactic civilization. The Void Merchants, who had made fortunes trading in Valerian technology, responded that their fleet was committed to protecting their own trade routes. The Tech Syndicate, a coalition of cybernetic species that had learned much from Valerian harmonic principles, claimed they were dealing with their own internal crises and could not spare any resources. One by one, every ally, every trading partner, every species that had benefited from Valerian knowledge and generosity found reasons to look the other way. Some were honest about their fear. The Devourer Plague was legendary for its ability to corrupt even the most advanced technology. Others hid behind bureaucracy and politics. A few simply ignored the calls entirely. "How long do we have?" Zarathus asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Kethmaran, the lead scientist studying the plague's advancement, stepped forward. His elderly form moved slowly, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. At current expansion rates, the corruption will reach the capital city within 72 hours. The major population centers will fall within a week. Complete planetary consumption. He paused, his patterns showing the deep sadness of one who had spent his life in the pursuit of knowledge, only to watch it all face destruction. Complete consumption within 1 month. The numbers were clinical, precise, but they represented the end of everything the Valerians had built over 3 millennia of civilization. Their great libraries of harmonic knowledge, their magnificent cities that sang with crystalline beauty, their art forms that created beauty from pure mathematics and sound. All of it would be consumed and twisted into something unrecognizable. "There must be something we can do," whispered Larathus, the youngest member of the council. Her patterns flickered with the rapid oscillations of panic. "Our ancestors survived the great storms, the crystal plagues, the void incursions. Surely we can find a way to stop this." Dr. Kethmaran's patterns showed gentle but firm negation. "Those were natural disasters, child. This is something else entirely. The plague learns from every technology it consumes. Our own harmonic principles, which have been our greatest strength, have become weapons against us. The corrupted systems use our own resonance frequencies to spread faster and penetrate deeper into our infrastructure. Through the crystal walls, they could see more lights going dark in the distance as another facility fell to the advancing corruption. Each lost installation meant hundreds of Valerians fleeing with nothing but what they could carry, refugees in their own world." Zarathus closed her large, dark eyes and felt the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders like a mountain. People looked to her for guidance, for hope, for a solution that might not exist. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy had abandoned them to face extinction alone. "Continue sending the distress signals," she ordered quietly. "Expand the range to include unknown sectors. Perhaps there are species out there we have never encountered, peoples who might still remember what it means to help strangers in need." "First, Speaker," Beltharian said gently, "we have already transmitted to every known communication frequency across thousands of light years. If anyone was going to respond, they would have done so by now." She understood his logic, but giving up was not in her nature. The Valerians had always believed that harmony could be found even in the darkest chaos, that somewhere in the vast universe, there was always a resonance that could bring balance. Then we transmit to the unknown frequencies too. We send our story, our plea, our final testimony into the void itself. If we are to perish, at least the galaxy will know that we tried everything. As night fell over Nexara, the crystal cities continued their ancient songs, their harmonious frequencies carrying across the planet one last time. But the music was different now, touched with sadness and urgency. It was the sound of a civilization, singing its own funeral song, hoping against hope that somewhere in the darkness between the stars someone was listening. The transmission arrays worked through the night, sending Valerian poetry, history, and desperate pleas for help into the endless black. Most of these messages would travel for years without reaching anyone. Most would fade into background radiation, unheard and unanswered. But somewhere in the darkness, on a small research vessel far from any major trade route, a young communications officer was about to discover that sometimes the most important messages are the ones no one expects to receive. The fate of an entire civilization now depended on whether anyone in the vast, uncaring galaxy still believed that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were impossible, and the reward was nothing more than doing what was right. As the first corrupted machines began their assault on the outer defenses of the capital city, Zarathus looked up at the stars one last time and whispered a prayer in the ancient harmonic language of her people. It was a prayer for courage, for hope, and for the possibility that somewhere among those distant lights, someone might still remember what it meant to be truly civilized. The answer to that prayer was already speeding toward them through hyperspace, though neither the Valerians nor the small human crew aboard the research vessel Perseverance had any idea how much their two species were about to change the galaxy forever. Part 2. The Unlikely Heroes, One Ship Against the Galaxy's Indifference. 3. Research vessel Perseverance drifted through the outer reaches of uncharted space, like a mechanical whale swimming through an ocean of stars. She was not an impressive ship by galactic standards, barely 300 meters from bow to stern, with the practical design of a vessel built for discovery rather than conquest. Her hull bore the scars of asteroid impacts and solar radiation, proof of the countless hours she had spent in the dark spaces between civilizations. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in her ready room, reviewing the latest survey reports with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. At 42, she had spent half her life among the stars, leading exploration missions to map the unknown regions beyond the galactic core. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her brown eyes held the patient intensity of someone who had learned to find wonder in the smallest discoveries. The Perseverance carried a crew of 120 souls, each one hand-picked, for their expertise and their ability to work in the isolation of deep space. They were scientists, engineers, linguists, and dreamers who had volunteered to spend years away from Earth to expand humanity's understanding of the universe. Dr. Marcus Chen, the ship's chief xenobiologist, knocked on the doorframe. His Asian features were animated with excitement, as they always were when he had discovered something new. "Captain, you need to see this. We're picking up something unusual on the long-range communications array." Elena followed him to the bridge, where the normal, quiet efficiency of the night shift had been replaced by a buzz of activity. Lieutenant Sarah O'Brien, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from her console with a puzzled expression. Her red hair was escaping from its ponytail, and her Irish accent was more pronounced than usual, as it always was when she was excited or frustrated. "Captain, we've got signals coming in on frequencies I've never seen before. The computer's having a devil of a time making sense of them. But there's definitely intelligence behind the transmissions." The main screen displayed a complex wave pattern, pulsing with rhythmic variations that suggested language or music, rather than random noise. Elena had spent enough time studying alien communications to recognize the hallmarks of an organized message, even when she couldn't understand its content. "How far out is the source?" she asked. "That's the strange part," replied Lieutenant Commander James Park, their navigation officer. His usually precise demeanor showed cracks of uncertainty. "The signals are coming from a system about 6 days away at maximum jump speed. But according to our charts, that sector is supposed to be uninhabited. No recorded civilizations, no previous contact with any known species." Elena studied the wave patterns more closely. There was something desperate about their repetition, a quality that reminded her of distress calls she had heard from ships in trouble. But there was also something else, a complexity and beauty that suggested a highly advanced civilization. "Can we decode any of it?" she asked. Dr. Chen pulled up, his analysis on a secondary screen. "The linguistic patterns are unlike anything in our databases, but there are mathematical constants embedded in the transmission that suggest universal concepts. Give me another few hours, and I might be able to establish basic communication protocols." "Captain," interrupted Lieutenant O'Brien, her voice dropping to a whisper, "there's something else. I've been monitoring the background chatter from the major trade routes. Word spreading about something called a devourer plague in that same sector. Ships are being warned to stay away, and the major galactic powers have issued official statements declining to intervene in what they're calling a localized technological malfunction. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. In her years of exploration, she had learned to read between the lines of official communications. When major civilizations unanimously decided to avoid a sector, it usually meant something truly dangerous was happening there. "Show me everything we have on this plague," she ordered. The bridge crew worked in silence as they compiled information from various sources. The picture that emerged was troubling. Ancient mechanical entities that consumed technology, turning it against its creators. Entire civilizations reduced to twisted metal monuments. And now, apparently, it was happening again. The last confirmed reports suggest a species called the Valerians are facing complete extinction, Dr. Chen reported. Every major power has refused to help. The Zephyrian Empire, the Crystallite Empire, the Tech Syndicate, they've all turned their backs. Lieutenant Park shook his head in disbelief. An entire species facing extinction and no one will help them? It gets worse, O'Brien added grimly. I've been cross-referencing the technical specifications of this devourer plague with what we know about various species technologies. The Valerians apparently use something called harmonic resonance technology. From what I can piece together, it's incredibly advanced, probably centuries ahead of anything we've seen. Elena understood the implication immediately. If the plague could corrupt such advanced technology, what chance did humanity have against it? The Perseverance was a research vessel with basic defensive capabilities and a crew trained for exploration, not warfare. "Captain," said Dr. Chen quietly, "I've managed to decode some of the transmissions. They're beautiful. Mathematical poetry describing their civilization, their history, their achievements, but they're also saying goodbye. These are farewell messages, last testimonies of a dying culture." The bridge fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, an entire civilization was facing extinction, while the galaxy's most powerful forces stood by and watched. "Earth command protocols are clear," Lieutenant Park said reluctantly. "First contact situations require authorization from headquarters. We're supposed to observe and report, not intervene in local conflicts." "This isn't a local conflict," Elena replied firmly. "This is genocide by mechanical plague, and every civilized species in the galaxy has decided it's not their problem." She walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Her crew waited behind her, knowing that whatever decision she made would define not just their mission, but their character as human beings. "Dr. Chen, how long before you can establish two-way communication?" "Another 6 hours, maybe 8. But Captain, even if we can talk to them, what can we do? We're one ship against something that apparently destroys entire civilizations." Elena turned back to face her crew. In their eyes, she saw the same mixture of fear and determination that she felt in her own heart. They were scientists and explorers, people who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe and humanity's place in it. If they turned away now, if they chose the safe path and left these beings to die alone, what would that say about the species they represented? "When humanity first reached for the stars," she said slowly, "we made a choice about what kind of species we wanted to be. We decided that knowledge, exploration, and the protection of intelligent life were more important than safety or convenience. Every time we've faced the unknown, we've chosen to step forward rather than back down." She looked at each of her officers in turn. "I won't pretend the odds are good. I won't pretend we can definitely save them. But I will not let it be said that when humanity heard a cry for help from the darkness, we chose to look the other way because it was easier." Lieutenant O'Brien was the first to speak. "The ship can handle a lot more than what's in the manual, Captain. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I've always wondered what humanity would do when we finally met a civilization that needed our help more than we needed theirs. I guess we're about to find out." Lieutenant Park consulted his navigation charts. "Course laid in for the Valerian system, Captain. We can make the jump in 30 minutes. Elena felt a moment of profound responsibility. She was about to take her crew into danger based on nothing more than the conviction that some things were worth fighting for, even when the outcome was uncertain. It was the kind of decision that would either make them heroes or get them all killed. Signal Earth Command that we're investigating an uncharted system for possible first contact, she ordered. Don't mention the plague or our intentions until we're already committed. By the time they receive the message and respond, we'll be too far away for them to order us back. As the crew prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Elena returned to her ready room and recorded a personal message to her family. She told them about the decision she had made and why she had made it. She spoke of duty, of humanity's responsibility to use its strengths to protect others, and of the belief that the universe was a better place when civilizations helped, rather than abandoned each other. The hyperspace jump felt different this time, as if the ship itself understood the gravity of their mission. When they emerged 6 days later at the edge of the Valerian system, the sight that greeted them was both beautiful and heartbreaking. The planet Nexara hung before them like a jewel, its crystal cities visible even from orbit as they caught and reflected the light of the system's twin suns. But dark patches were spreading across the surface like an infection, areas where the harmonic glow had been replaced by the chaotic emanations of corrupted technology. "Captain," reported Dr. Chen from his console, "I'm receiving a response to our hails. They're actually talking to us." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the image of a being unlike any human had ever seen. Zarathis appeared, as a figure of ethereal beauty, her translucent blue skin shifting through patterns of light that conveyed emotion more clearly than any human expression. Her large, dark eyes held depths of wisdom and sadness that spoke of a civilization facing its final hours. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic undertones that the universal translator rendered as music, rather than simple words. "Unknown vessel, I am first speaker Zarathis of the Valerian people. We do not know your species, but your arrival in our darkest hour fills us with wonder. Are you here to witness our end, or—" She paused as if afraid to voice the hope that flickered in her luminous eyes. "Or have you come to help?" Elena stepped forward, feeling the weight of history in this moment of first contact. "First speaker, I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Perseverance. We received your distress calls and came as quickly as we could. We're here to help if you'll have us." The silence that followed was broken only by the harmonic resonance of Valerian technology and the quiet hum of human machinery. Two species, meeting for the first time in the shadow of extinction, were about to discover what it truly meant to stand together against impossible odds. Zarathis's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what Elena somehow instinctively recognized as joy mixed with disbelief. "You would risk your lives for strangers? Your people would do this?" Elena smiled, thinking of all the generations of humans who had made similar choices throughout history. "First speaker, that's exactly what humans do, standing against the storm. When everyone else runs, humans dig in, the science laboratories." Aboard the Perseverance had been transformed into something resembling a war room, crossed with a medical facility. Human and Valerian scientists worked side by side, their different approaches to technology creating a fascinating synthesis of innovation. The harmonic resonance of Valerian equipment hummed in perfect counterpoint to the steady electronic buzz of human computers, creating an oddly beautiful soundtrack to their desperate race against time. Dr. Marcus Chen bent over a microscopic sample of the Devourer plague, his instrument struggling to analyze something that seemed to exist at the intersection of mechanical engineering and viral biology. Beside him, Valerian scientist Dr. Moth Aaron manipulated the sample with tools made of living crystal that responded to harmonic frequencies rather than physical manipulation. "It's unlike anything in our databases," Dr. Chen muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's not quite alive, not quite machine. It's as if someone took the concept of evolution and applied it to technology itself." Dr. Motheron's bioluminescent patterns flickered with patterns that the translation software rendered as frustrated agreement. "The plague learns from every system it consumes. Our harmonic principles, which took centuries to perfect, become weapons against us within hours of contact. It adapts faster than we can develop countermeasures. On the planet's surface below, the situation had grown desperate. The Devourer plague had accelerated its consumption, feeding off the very resistance attempts that the Valerians had tried to mount. Entire city districts had gone dark in the past 12 hours. Their crystal spires twisted into grotesque monuments that pulsed with malevolent energy. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation lounge, watching the lights of Nexara's capital city flicker like candles in a storm. Each one that went out represented thousands of lives disrupted, families fleeing their homes with nothing but what they could carry. "Captain," Lieutenant O'Brien's voice came over the intercom. "We're getting reports from our monitoring stations. 3 more Valerian cities have gone dark in the past hour. Whatever this thing is, it's accelerating." Elena activated her communicator. "How are the evacuation efforts proceeding?" "We've managed to get about 50,000 Valerians to the safe zones in the northern continent," reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the surface. "But that's barely 2% of the planetary population. At this rate, we'll need months to evacuate everyone, and we have days at most." Through the view screen, Elena could see the twisted masses of corrupted technology spreading across the planet's surface like metallic cancer. The plague consumed not just machines but the very infrastructure of civilization. Roads became writhing metal serpents, buildings transformed into geometric nightmares, and vehicles turned against their former owners with predatory intelligence. "Dr. Chen," she called to the science lab, "please tell me you found something useful." Chen's voice carried exhaustion and frustration. "We've learned a lot about what it does, but very little about how to stop it. The plague operates on principles that combine self-replication, adaptive learning, and something we can only call technological vampirism. It doesn't just consume machines. It absorbs their capabilities and improves upon them." "There must be a weakness," Elena insisted. "Everything has a weakness." It was Zarathis who provided the answer, her image appearing on the communications screen from the planetary command center. The first speaker looked haggard, her normally luminous patterns dim with exhaustion and grief. Behind her, Elena could see the organized chaos of a civilization making its last stand. "Captain Vasquez, our ancient archives have revealed something. The Devourer plague has appeared before, many times throughout galactic history. It emerges, consumes several civilizations, then mysteriously disappears for millennia." Elena leaned forward. "What makes it disappear?" "We are not certain, but the patterns suggest it is not destroyed, it withdraws, as if something causes it to determine that the risk of continued operation exceeds the benefit of further consumption." Dr. Motharan joined the conversation, his patterns shifting to indicate sudden inspiration. "The plague learns and adapts, yes, but it also evaluates. It weighs costs against benefits. If we could make resistance more expensive than retreat, we'd need to hurt it badly enough that it decides to find easier targets elsewhere," Elena finished. "But how do we hurt something that grows stronger every time it consumes our technology?" The answer came from an unlikely source. Chief Petty, Officer Rodriguez, a maintenance specialist who had been helping with the evacuation efforts, contacted the ship with a report that initially seemed routine. "Captain, we've had some strange interactions with the corrupted systems down here. When our equipment gets too close to the infected areas, it starts to show signs of contamination. But here's the odd thing. Our more primitive tools seem to resist longer than the advanced ones." Elena felt a spark of understanding. "Define primitive." "Well, mechanical tools resist longer than electronic ones. Simple electronics last longer than complex ones. And anything with purely analog components seems almost immune." Dr. Chen was already running calculations before Rodriguez finished, speaking. "Of course. The plague feeds on complexity and sophistication. Our quantum computers and nanoscale processors would be like gourmet meals to it, but a simple mechanical lever or an old-fashioned combustion engine would be like trying to feed a vampire stale bread," Elena finished. "It can consume them, but they don't provide the technological nutrition it craves." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Humanity's technology, while advanced, was still centuries behind the Valerian harmonic systems in terms of sophistication. Where Valerian devices operated on principles of quantum resonance and crystalline computing, human technology still relied heavily on more primitive electromagnetic and mechanical principles. We're not easier prey, Elena realized. We're poisonous prey. Over the next 18 hours, the combined human-Valerian force began implementing what they called the rejection protocol. Instead of trying to fight the plague with advanced technology, they began flooding the infected areas with deliberately primitive human equipment modified with Valerian power sources. Lieutenant O'Brien led teams that built thousands of simple, mechanical devices, clockwork timers, spring-loaded mechanisms, basic combustion engines. Each one was powered by Valerian energy crystals but operated on principles so crude that the plague found them difficult to assimilate. It's like forcing a sophisticated computer virus to run on an abacus, O'Brien explained as she supervised the deployment of their improvised weapons. The plague can consume these devices, but doing so actually reduces its overall efficiency. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. They would deliberately feed the plague technology that would make it sick, forcing it to choose between consuming inefficient food and maintaining its current strength. But the Devourer plague was not passive in the face of this new strategy. As reports came in from around the planet, it became clear that the mechanical entities were adapting to the new threat. They began ignoring the primitive devices and focusing their attacks on population centers, seeking to force the defenders to use more advanced technology to protect civilians. This led to the first direct confrontation between human forces and the plague entities. The battle took place in the crystal gardens of Lir Andros, one of Nexara's most beautiful cities. The plague had surrounded the evacuation zones with corrupted machinery, forcing the defenders to choose between abandoning civilians or engaging with superior forces. Elena led the human contingent personally, knowing that asking her crew to risk their lives for strangers required her to share that risk. The Perseverance took up position in low orbit, using its mining lasers and survey equipment as improvised weapons against the massive plague constructs rising from the city's ruins. The fight was unlike anything in human military history. Their enemies were not soldiers or ships, but the very infrastructure of civilization turned malevolent. Roads reached up to grab at their shuttles with asphalt tendrils. Buildings fired missiles made from their own plumbing. Communication arrays became weapons that attacked with focused electromagnetic pulses. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Park as he piloted his shuttle through a maze of flying debris that had once been a municipal transport system. "How do you fight a city that's trying to kill you?" The answer came from Dr. Chen, working frantically in the ship's laboratory as the battle raged around them. "We don't fight the city. We fight the intelligence controlling it. The plague consciousness is distributed, but it has to coordinate its actions somehow. If we can disrupt that coordination..." Elena understood immediately. "We don't need to destroy it. We just need to make it confused enough to make mistakes." The solution involved a sacrifice that none of them had anticipated. Dr. Motheran, the Valerian scientist who had worked so closely with the human team, volunteered to use his own harmonic abilities as a weapon against the plague's coordination network. "My people's consciousness operates on harmonic frequencies," he explained, his bioluminescent patterns showing the calm acceptance of someone facing death for a greater purpose. "If I can synchronize with the plague's network and then deliberately desynchronize at the crucial moment, it should create cascading feedback that disrupts their coordination." "That will kill you," Dr. Chen said bluntly. "Yes," Motheran replied simply, "but it will also save my people, and perhaps teach this plague that some prey bites back." Elena tried to find another way, but time was running out. The plague constructs were breaking through the defensive perimeters, and thousands of Valerian civilians were trapped in the evacuation zones. The decision was taken out of her hands when Motheran simply walked toward the nearest plague concentration, his harmonic song growing louder with each step. The effect was immediate and devastating. As Motheran's consciousness merged with the plague network, the coordinated attacks became chaotic. Corrupted machines began attacking each other instead of their targets. The writhing metal constructs froze mid-motion, their collective intelligence overloaded by conflicting signals. Dr. Mothran's sacrifice created a window of opportunity that lasted exactly 17 minutes. In those 17 minutes, the combined human Valerian forces evacuated over 200,000 civilians and established new defensive positions in the northern territories. But the cost was terrible. When the plague network finally purged, Mothran's disruptive influence had returned with a vengeance. The mechanical entities had learned from the attack and began implementing new protective protocols. Worse, they had gained insights into Valerian consciousness that made them even more effective at corrupting harmonic technology. Elena stood in the medical bay, looking down at Dr. Chen's exhausted form as he recovered from the mental strain of his connection with Mothran during the final moments. The human scientist had felt the Valerian's death through their shared research link, an experience that had left him emotionally shattered but also strangely enlightened. "He showed me something before the end," Chen whispered. "The plague isn't just consuming technology. It's consuming the essence of what makes each species unique. Their creativity, their problem-solving abilities, their cultural approaches to engineering. It's becoming a repository of galactic civilization's greatest achievements but twisted into something hostile." Elena felt a chill as she understood the implications. It's not just destroying civilizations, it's stealing their legacies and using them as weapons against others. "But there's something else," Chen continued, his voice growing stronger. Mothran sensed something in the plague's core programming. It's not just randomly aggressive, it's searching for something specific, some particular type of technology or knowledge. All of this consumption, all of this destruction, it's serving a larger purpose. Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Lieutenant O'Brien's voice came over the intercom with barely controlled panic. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge immediately. We've got massive energy signatures emerging from the planetary core. Whatever the plague has been building down there, it's powering up." Elena rushed to the bridge to find her crew staring at sensor readings that seemed impossible. Deep beneath Nexara's surface, the plague had been constructing something enormous, using the planet's own geological resources. Tunnels of corrupted crystal stretched for hundreds of kilometers, forming geometric patterns that pulsed with stolen energy from consumed Valerian technology. "It's a transmission array," Dr. Chen realized as he joined them on the bridge, still weak but determined to help. "The plague has been building a massive communication system. But transmitting to what?" The answer came in the form of long-range sensor contacts appearing at the edge of the system. Ships unlike any in the galactic databases, constructed from the same corrupted technology as the plague entities on the surface. Dozens of them, approaching from the deep void between galaxies. "First speaker," Elena called to Zarathis. "Are you seeing this?" The Valerian leader's image appeared on screen, her patterns now showing the deep calm of someone who has moved beyond fear into acceptance. "Yes, Captain. It appears the plague on our world was not the disease itself, but merely the symptom. We have been infected so that we could serve as a beacon to call something far worse." Lieutenant Park ran calculations at his navigation station. "Captain, based on their current approach vector and speed, those ships will reach Nexara in approximately 6 hours. Each one is roughly the size of a space station." Elena looked around at her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They had come to help one dying world, and discovered they were facing something that threatened the entire galaxy. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to retreat and warn the major galactic powers about what was coming. Instead, she activated the ship's general communication system. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez to all hands. I won't lie to you about our situation. We're one research vessel facing an invasion fleet that could destroy entire star systems. Every major civilization in the galaxy has refused to help. We're outgunned, outnumbered, and probably outmatched in every way that matters." She paused, looking out at the stars where humanity's future hung in the balance. "But we're still here, and as long as we're here, the Valerians are not alone. As long as we're here, this plague doesn't get to consume another civilization without a fight. As long as we're here, someone is standing up to the darkness and saying, 'Not today.'" The response from her crew was immediate and unanimous. Every department reported ready for action. Every station confirmed their commitment to the fight ahead. As the alien invasion fleet approached and the corrupted planetary array powered up to coordinate their assault, Elena realized that humanity was about to face its greatest test. Not a test of technology or military might, but a test of character. In 6 hours, they would discover what happened when humans chose to stand and fight rather than run and hide. The galaxy was watching, even if they didn't know it yet. And the universe was about to learn that some species would rather die fighting for strangers than live safely by abandoning them. The plague had made one critical error in its calculations. It had assumed that all organic species would behave like the civilizations it had encountered before, that when faced with overwhelming odds, they would choose preservation over principle. It had never encountered humanity before, and it was about to discover that humans had a very different definition of acceptable losses when it came to protecting innocent lives. Heroes inspire heroes. The news traveled across the galaxy faster than any starship could fly. On crystalline communication networks, through quantum entanglement arrays, and across the vast web of galactic civilization, the same impossible story spread from world to world. A single human vessel was standing against an invasion fleet that could destroy star systems. In the gleaming towers of the Zephyrian capital, young military officers gathered around holographic displays showing the tactical situation at Nexara. The images were grainy, transmitted through emergency beacons and automated observatories. But the message was clear. One small research ship was engaging enemies that their own battle fleets had declared too dangerous to face. Commander Zekthor, barely past his flight certification, stared at the display with growing shame. His golden feathers, normally bright with pride, had dimmed to the color of old brass. Around him, other junior officers showed similar signs of distress. "How many ships did the humans send?" asked Flight Leader Nalden. "According to all reports, just one," Zekthor replied quietly. "A research vessel with basic weapons and a crew of explorers." The silence that followed was broken only by the harmonious hum of Zephyrian technology. These young warriors had been raised on stories of their species' glorious military tradition, taught that Zephyrian courage was unmatched in the galaxy. Yet here were aliens they had never heard of, doing what the entire Zephyrian Empire had declared impossible. "Sir," Nal then said hesitantly to their superior, "perhaps we should recommend to command that we reconsider our position on the Nexara situation." Wing Commander Rethtar, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, looked at his young officers with an expression they had never seen before. For the first time in his career, he appeared uncertain. "The High Command has made its decision. Based on strategic analysis, the risk of engaging these plague entities outweighs any potential benefit. But what about honor?" The question came from the youngest officer present, barely out of the academy. "What about the oath we swore to protect innocent life?" Rethtar's feathers ruffled with discomfort. The same conversation was happening in military barracks, government offices, and civilian gathering places across Zephyrian space. A species that had prided itself on martial valor was being shown up by explorers with mining equipment. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. In the crystal cities of the Confederacy, citizens who had spent generations in peaceful contemplation found themselves asking uncomfortable questions about moral obligations. The Aquatic Dominion's vast underwater cities buzzed with debates about the difference between strategic wisdom and cowardice. But it was among the younger generations that the human example had the most profound impact. Across hundreds of worlds, students, junior officers, and young professionals began demanding that their leaders reconsider the abandonment of Nexara. On the trade hub of Terminus Station, a mixed group of young beings from different species had gathered in the observation lounge to watch the news feeds from the battle zone. The images showed the Perseverance, tiny against the massive plague constructs, firing continuously as it tried to buy time for Valerian evacuation efforts. Kesara, a young crystalline diplomat, watched with tears forming in her multifaceted eyes. "They're going to die for people they'd never met before this week." "The tactical analysis is sound," replied Mordeg, a void merchant whose species prided itself on logical thinking. "The humans cannot possibly win. They're throwing their lives away for no strategic gain." No strategic gain? Thelosa, an ethereal, collective individual who had recently achieved independent consciousness, flickered with agitation. They're saving an entire civilization. They're showing the galaxy what courage actually looks like. The argument that followed would be repeated millions of times across galactic civilization. Was it noble or foolish to risk everything for strangers? Was the human action an inspiration or a cautionary tale about the dangers of emotional decision-making? The answer began to emerge as more detailed reports reached the galactic networks. The human vessel was not just fighting, it was succeeding in ways that the major powers' computer models had declared impossible. Captain Elena Vasquez had divided her crew into specialized teams that maximized their technological advantages while minimizing the plague's ability to adapt. Engineering teams led by Lieutenant O'Brien had created hybrid weapons that combined Valerian harmonic principles with human electromagnetic theory, producing effects that neither species could achieve alone. Dr. Chen and the remaining Valerian scientists had developed new understanding of the plague's weaknesses, discovering that its adaptive algorithms became confused when faced with technology that operated on fundamentally different principles than what it had previously encountered. Most importantly, the human crew's willingness to take calculated risks had allowed them to gather intelligence about the plague's true nature and objectives. They had discovered that this was not a random disaster, but a coordinated assault, designed to harvest the technological essence of advanced civilizations. The plague entities are preparing something massive, Elena reported in her latest transmission to Earth Command. The invasion fleet isn't here to destroy Nexara. It's here to collect whatever the surface plague has been building. We believe it's some kind of galactic positioning system, designed to coordinate similar attacks across the entire galaxy. The implications were staggering. If successful, the plague could launch simultaneous invasions of every major technological civilization, overwhelming their defenses before any coordinated response could be mounted. Admiral Harrison, receiving Elena's report at Earth Command, felt the weight of galactic history settling on his shoulders. The human vessel had not just saved one world, it had uncovered a threat to every intelligent species in the galaxy. Get me connections to the Zephyrian High Command, the Crystalline Council, and the Ethereal Collective Leadership, he ordered his communications staff. If Captain Vasquez is right about this, we're all facing extinction unless we act now. The first response came from an unexpected source. Wing Commander Rethtar, acting without authorization from his superiors, launched with a squadron of volunteer Zephyrian fighters. His transmission to the High Command was brief and direct. Some things are more important than orders. Some fights are too important to abandon to others. Within hours, his unauthorized action triggered a cascade of similar decisions across the galaxy. Young officers who had been shamed by humanity's example began defying their own commands. Civilian vessels loaded with medical supplies and technical equipment began converging on the Nexara system. Even some of the major corporations, recognizing the threat to their own interests, quietly began providing support. The first Allied ship to reach Nexara was a crystalline medical vessel commanded by Kesara, the young diplomat who had been moved by the human sacrifice. Her ship arrived just as the plague invasion fleet reached the outer system, and her first transmission went directly to the Perseverance. Captain Vasquez, this is Medical Ship Harmony's Light. We're here to help. Elena's response was characteristically direct. Welcome to the fight. Hope you brought more than medical supplies. Kesara's crystalline features showed what humans would recognize as a grim smile. We brought something better. We brought proof that your example is spreading. Over the next 6 hours, 17 more ships arrived from various species. None were official military vessels. Their governments were still debating the political implications of intervention, but each one carried volunteers who had been inspired by humanity's refusal to abandon the Valerians. The makeshift fleet that assembled around Nexara was unlike anything in galactic history. Zephyrian fighters flew alongside aquatic exploration pods. Crystalline medical ships shared formation with void merchant cargo haulers that had been hastily converted to carry weapons. At the center of it all, the human research vessel Perseverance coordinated their efforts with the calm professionalism of a species that had somehow made impossible heroism look routine. Dr. Chen, working with scientists from multiple species, had made a breakthrough in understanding the plague's central weakness. It's not just that they consume technology, he explained to the Allied fleet commanders. They consume the cultural and intellectual patterns that created that technology. But when faced with truly cooperative efforts between different species, their algorithms break down. The plague was designed to fight individual civilizations, Elena added. It's never encountered a truly united response before. Our diversity isn't a weakness, it's the key to victory. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when galactic civilization discovered its true potential. Each species contributed their unique strengths to a coordinated defense that no single culture could have mounted alone. Zephyrian. Fighters used their speed and maneuverability to harry the massive plague ships, keeping them from focusing their fire on any single target. Crystalline vessels provided sensor coordination and battlefield communication that allowed perfect synchronization between forces that had never worked together before. Aquatic ships used their specialized technology to disrupt the plague's quantum coordination systems. And at the center of it all, the human crew that had started this impossible fight continued to do what they did best: adapt, improvise, and refuse to give up no matter how bad the odds became. The Plague Invasion Fleet, designed to overwhelm individual civilizations through superior coordination, found itself facing something it had never encountered before: a truly unified response from multiple species working in perfect harmony. For the first time in galactic history, the Devourer Plague faced a force that was more than the sum of its parts. And for the first time in eons, the ancient mechanical entities discovered what it meant to be outmatched not by superior technology, but by superior courage. The universe was about to witness something unprecedented, the first time in recorded history that organic civilizations had not only stood against the plague, but actually driven it back. And it had all started with one human captain's decision that some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. When humanity leads, the galaxy follows. The final assault began at dawn on Nexara, when the twin suns cast their light across a planet transformed by war. The crystal cities that had once sung with harmonic beauty now stood as twisted monuments to technological corruption. But in their shadows, something unprecedented was taking shape. For the first time in galactic history, 17 different species were fighting as one unified force. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of Allied vessels. The makeshift fleet had grown throughout the night as more volunteer ships arrived, drawn by stories of the impossible alliance forming around Nexara. "Final count, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Park. 23 ships representing 12 species plus support vessels carrying medical supplies and technical equipment. Not exactly a battle fleet, but it's the most unified force the galaxy has ever seen. Elena nodded, feeling the weight of command settling on her shoulders. She had started this fight with one ship and 120 souls. Now she was coordinating a galactic response that could determine the future of organic civilization. Dr. Chen's voice came over the intercom from the science lab. "Captain, we've completed the analysis of the plague's core system. The good news is we were right about their central coordination being their weakness. The bad news is the only way to exploit it requires someone to get very close to their primary node." "How close?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Physical contact close. The plague's quantum shielding makes remote attacks impossible. Someone has to fly directly into the heart of their network and plant the disruption device manually." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the sacrifices that had brought them to this point. Dr. Motharan's willing death to disrupt the plague's coordination. The volunteers from across the galaxy who had risked their careers and lives to join a fight that wasn't technically their own. The Valerian civilians who had trusted strange aliens to protect their world. "I'll take a shuttle," she said simply. "Captain, no." Lieutenant O'Brien's voice was firm. "The Perseverance needs you to coordinate the fleet. Besides, this is an engineering problem, and I'm the best engineer we've got." The argument that followed was brief, but intense. Every senior officer volunteered for what was clearly a suicide mission. In the end, it was Zarathis who provided the solution, her image appearing on the main screen from the planetary command center. Captain Vasquez, there is another way. The Plague's central node is located in the heart of our planetary harmonic network. My people built that network. We know its resonance patterns better than any computer system could learn them. Elena understood immediately. You're suggesting a joint operation, human technology to deliver the device, Valerian knowledge to guide it to the target. More than that, Zarathis replied. I will pilot the mission myself. This is my world, my people. I will not ask others to die for us while I remain safely behind. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. A joint human-Valerian team would penetrate the Plague's defensive network using a modified shuttle equipped with both species' most advanced technology. They would fight their way to the central node, plant Dr. Chen's quantum disruptor, and attempt to escape before the cascade failure destroyed the entire Plague network. The chances of survival were essentially zero. Elena found herself in the shuttle bay, conducting final equipment checks alongside Zarathis and Dr. Chen, who had insisted on joining the mission to ensure the disruptor device functioned properly. Lieutenant O'Brien had modified their shuttle with every defensive system she could imagine, creating a hybrid vessel that looked like it belonged in no single technological tradition. You know, Elena said as she sealed her environmental suit. When I joined Starfleet, they told me exploration was about expanding humanity's knowledge of the universe. They never mentioned it would involve flying into the middle of hostile alien technology to save a species we'd never met before. Zarathis's bioluminescent patterns showed what Elena had learned to recognize as Valerian humor. When I became first speaker, my advisors told me diplomacy was about careful negotiation and gradual progress. They never mentioned it would involve trusting my life to warriors from a species whose name I learned 3 days ago. Dr. Chen checked his equipment one final time. When I became a scientist, I thought discovery was about careful observation and controlled experiments. I never imagined I'd be trying to inject a computer virus into a quantum biological hybrid network while flying through a maze of hostile robots. Elena looked at her unlikely companions and felt a moment of profound gratitude. 3 days ago, they had been strangers from different worlds, different species, different ways of understanding the universe. Now they were preparing to die together to protect people they would never meet. Launch when ready, she announced to the bridge. The shuttle bay doors opened to reveal the battle raging in the space around Nexara. The Allied fleet had formed a protective corridor, using their combined firepower to clear a path through the Plague's defensive formations. Zephyrian fighters danced between massive Plague constructs, their golden hulls glinting as they drew enemy fire away from larger vessels. Crystalline ships provided sensor coverage and communication coordination, their faceted surfaces refracting scanner beams to create false targets that confused the Plague's targeting systems. Elena piloted the shuttle through the chaos, relying on Valerian harmonic navigation to find safe passages through the defensive network. The Plague entities adapted quickly to their presence, but the hybrid nature of their technology created gaps in the enemy's countermeasures. Approaching the planetary surface, Elena reported. The node is located beneath the capital city in the original harmonic resonance chamber. What they found when they reached the surface was beyond anything their preparations had anticipated. The Plague had not just consumed the city. It had rebuilt it as a living extension of its own consciousness. Streets pulsed with mechanical blood vessels. Buildings breathed with artificial lungs. The very air hummed with the electromagnetic signatures of a technological organism that had grown beyond its original programming. Flying through this mechanical maze required skills that no single species possessed. Elena's human reflexes and combat training kept them alive through the initial approach. Zarathis's understanding of harmonic resonance allowed them to navigate passages that would have been invisible to purely electronic sensors. Dr. Chen's scientific knowledge helped them avoid the most dangerous concentrations of Plague activity. The central node, when they finally reached it, was beautiful in its alien majesty. A crystalline structure hundreds of meters tall, it pulsed with the combined technological essence of every civilization the plague had ever consumed. Elena could see Valerian harmonic patterns woven together with Zephyrian energy matrices, crystalline quantum principles merged with void merchant space folding technology. "It's not just a computer," Dr. Chen whispered in awe. "It's a library. Every technological advancement, every scientific breakthrough, every engineering innovation from thousands of civilizations, all of it stored, cataloged, and twisted to serve the plague's purposes." Zarathus's patterns showed deep sadness. So much knowledge, so much beauty, all of it corrupted and turned against its creators. Elena forced herself to focus on the mission. Can we plant the disruptor? The resonance frequencies are more complex than we anticipated, Zarathus replied, studying her readings. But yes, I can guide it to the proper location. However, the insertion will require precise timing. The node's defenses will activate the moment they detect the device. What followed was the most harrowing 15 minutes of Elena's life. Flying through the node's internal structure was like navigating the circulatory system of a mechanical god. Walls shifted to block their passage. Automated defenses fired weapons that adapted their frequencies with each shot. The very air seemed to turn hostile, electromagnetic fields trying to disable their shuttle's systems. But they had advantages the plague couldn't account for. The hybrid nature of their technology created blind spots in the node's defenses. More importantly, they had something the plague had never encountered before. 3 different species working in perfect coordination, each one contributing their unique strengths to overcome obstacles that would have been impossible for any single culture. Elena's piloting got them through the mechanical defenses. Zarathus's harmonic knowledge guided them to the node's vulnerable core. Dr. Chen's scientific expertise identified the exact point where the disruptor would cause maximum cascade failure. The moment of truth came when they reached the node's heart, a chamber that pulsed with the stolen dreams of 1,000 civilizations. Elena set the shuttle down on what appeared to be solid ground, only to discover that even the landing platform was alive, mechanical tentacles reaching up to examine their vessel. "Now or never," Elena announced. They moved as a team, Elena providing cover fire while Zarathus guided Dr. Chen to the precise installation point. The node's defenses threw everything they had at the intruders, but the 3 companions had learned to fight as one organism, each one anticipating the other's needs. Dr. Chen installed the disruptor with hands that shook only slightly, his scientific training overriding his fear. Device armed, 30 seconds to cascade initiation. That was when Elena made the decision that would define her legacy. The shuttle had taken too much damage during their insertion. The escape route they had planned was blocked by the node's defensive systems. There wasn't enough time for all 3 of them to reach safety. "Zarathus, Chen, get back to the shuttle." "Captain, we can make it together," Dr. Chen protested. Elena smiled, thinking of all the heroes throughout human history who had made similar choices. "Not all of us, but that's okay. Sometimes the point isn't survival. Sometimes the point is making sure the right thing happens." She armed every weapon system she carried and turned toward the approaching plague defenses. "Tell the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises. Tell them we said you're worth fighting for." The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The quantum disruptor triggered a cascade failure that spread throughout the entire plague network, causing every corrupted system on Nexara to simply stop functioning. The invasion fleet in orbit, suddenly cut off from their coordination systems, found themselves facing a unified alliance that no longer feared their technological superiority. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. Deprived of their central coordination, the individual plague ships were no match for the combined fleet. One by one, they were either destroyed or driven back into the void between galaxies. But the real victory was not in the defeat of the plague. The real victory was in what happened next. In the weeks that followed, as Nexara began to rebuild, and the volunteer fleet disbanded, word of the battle spread throughout galactic civilization. Not just the tactical details, but the story of why it had happened. How one human captain had chosen to help strangers. How that choice had inspired others. How those others had inspired still more, until an entire galaxy discovered what it could accomplish when its peoples stood together. The formal ceremonies came later. The Galactic Defense Alliance, founded on principles of mutual aid and shared responsibility. The Elena Vasquez Academy for Interspecies Cooperation, established to train officers from all civilizations in the arts of unity and sacrifice. The Memorial Garden on Nexara, where crystalline spires sang the names of all who had died in the defense of a world that wasn't their own. But perhaps the most important legacy was found in the everyday choices made by ordinary beings across the galaxy. Young Zephyrians who chose to serve others before themselves. Crystalline citizens who looked beyond their own species' interests. Void merchants who discovered that some things were more valuable than profit. Dr. Chen, one of the few survivors of the final assault, spent his remaining years teaching at universities across the galaxy. His most popular lecture was always the same. The day we learned that courage is contagious, and that sometimes the smallest actions can save the universe. Zarathis, rebuilding her world with help from dozens of species, became the first president of the Galactic Defense Alliance. Her speeches always ended with the same words. When Elena Vasquez chose to answer our call for help, she didn't just save the Valerian people, she saved the galaxy's soul. And in the far reaches of space, where human exploration vessels continued their missions of discovery, every captain carried the same unofficial orders. When someone needs help, you help. When someone faces extinction, you stand with them. When the galaxy forgets what it means to be civilized, you remind them. Because sometimes the universe needs to be shown that some species will always choose to fight for strangers, protect the innocent, and stand against the darkness, no matter the cost, and sometimes that's enough to change everything.